It was late evening when I returned to the school after months of summer break. The corridors were quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that presses against your ears, making you feel like you should not even breathe loudly. I walked slowly, my footsteps echoing off the tall walls, echoing slowly. The classrooms looked darker than usual, as if the daylight outside had forgotten to enter the windows. I stopped near the science lab. The door was slightly open, though it should have been locked. I placed my hand on the knob. The metal was strangely cold, colder than ice. Wind blowing through cracks. I pushed the door gently. Inside, the chairs were scattered across the room, as if someone had left in a hurry. One chair was rocking back and forth, though there was no wind. I froze, my heart beating louder in my chest, growing louder. I whispered to myself, maybe the janitor left it open. But deep down, I knew something was wrong.
I stepped back into the hallway, and suddenly the fluorescent light above me flickered. I looked up, and for a moment I thought I saw a shadow stretch across the ceiling, but when I blinked, it was gone. I tried to move faster, my shoes tapping against the tiled floor, but then I heard it. Another set of footsteps following me from behind, perfectly in sync with mine. I stopped. The sound stopped. I moved again. It moved again. I turned quickly. The hallway was empty, just lockers and shadows. But one locker door was slightly ajar, and it slowly began to close by itself. I whispered, "Who's there?" My voice trembling, but the silence swallowed my words. I could almost feel someone standing just behind me, breathing. I rushed into my old classroom, thinking I would be safe. But the moment I stepped in, the blackboard screeched as if invisible nails were dragging across it. My hands covered my ears, but the sound drilled into my skull, and then it stopped. I lowered my hands and saw something written across the board in jagged white chalk. It said, "Get out." The windows rattled violently, though the night outside was calm. And then, one by one, the desks in front of me began to move, dragging themselves across the floor toward me, sound approaching. I backed against the wall, my breath short and shallow, my heartbeat deafening. And then the door of the classroom slammed shut, trapping me inside. The floor beneath me creaked and cracked, and suddenly I realized I was no longer standing on wood, but something softer, something that felt like fabric. I looked down and saw old, torn school uniforms scattered across the floor, as if hundreds of students had left them behind. I whispered, "This cannot be real." And then, from beneath the pile of clothes, a hand emerged, pale fingers, long and thin, scratching the tiles. I screamed and stumbled back, falling against the desk when the lights above me went out, plunging the room into complete darkness. Sudden silence. In the dark, I heard dozens of whispers circling me. Voices of children chanting something I could not understand. Their voices grew louder, filling my ears, pressing against my skull until it was unbearable. And then the final sound came. The sound of a bell ringing loud and sharp, like the start of another class. But in that moment I knew class was not beginning. Class had never ended. It was the first day back to school after summer break. The corridors smelled of fresh paint, the lockers clanged as students settled in, and everything seemed normal. But for one student who stayed late that evening, nothing was normal. He had forgotten his notebook in class, so he came back after everyone had left. The hallways were empty, the lights buzzing faintly above. As he walked toward his classroom, he heard it. He turned. No one was there. When he reached the classroom, the door was slightly open. Inside, the chairs were stacked, but the blackboard wasn't erased. Written in chalk, in messy handwriting, were the words, "You shouldn't have come back." His heart pounded. He quickly grabbed his notebook, but as he turned, the lights flickered and died. The room went dark, except for a faint glow coming from the hallway. He stepped out and froze. Down the hall, every locker door was wide open, slamming shut one by one. He ran, but when he reached the main doors, they wouldn't budge. It was like the whole school was locking him inside. Suddenly the old bell rang, not the modern one, but the old rusted one that hadn't worked in years. From the end of the hall, he saw them. Rows of shadowy figures in torn school uniforms, their faces pale, their eyes missing. They stood still, watching. Then, slowly, they began walking toward him, in perfect unison. Desperate, he ran into the library. The shelves rattled, books flying off as if thrown by invisible hands. He ducked under a desk, trying to stay quiet. But then he heard it, right next to his ear, a whisper that wasn't his imagination. "Class is still in session." The next morning, the janitor found the library door locked from the inside. When he finally managed to force it open, there was no one there. Just a single notebook lying open on the desk. The last page had a message scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Don't stay after the last bell." It was the first week back to school. The air was heavy. The corridors smelled faintly of chalk and old wood. Students laughed outside, but inside, silence pressed against the walls. At the end of the hallway stood one locker, its paint chipped, its number scratched away. No one remembered who it belonged to. No one ever saw it open, but they said, if you stood too close, you would hear breathing inside. Most ignored it. Some joked about it. But one boy couldn't stop thinking about it. Every day the lock looked different, bent, twisted, as if something was pushing to get out. That night, he stayed late. The lights flickered. The janitor's footsteps echoed far away, and at the end of the hall, the locker waited. The boy froze. The tapping grew louder, closer, faster. The Aladdin, he leaned in. His hand touched the cold metal, and then he heard it, a voice from within. "Let me out." His whisper in the lock, he restumbled back, eyes wide. The hall was empty, but the locker was breathing faster now. He ran, but all night he dreamed of it. The sound of metal bending, the sound of whispers leaking through. The next day, he told his friends. They laughed, dared him to open it. So after class, they gathered at the end of the hallway. The locker stood waiting, its surface cold, wet with condensation, though the air was dry. One friend pressed his ear to it. He jerked back instantly, eyes wide, pale as chalk. "What did you hear?" the others demanded. His lips trembled, but no words came out. Only a faint whisper left his throat. "Don't open it." That night, the boy returned alone. The halls darker than before, shadows crawling along the walls. He brought a crowbar, hands shaking. The lock resisted, metal shrieking in the silence. And then, with a deafening crack, the door swung open. Inside was nothing, empty darkness, but it was wrong. The locker was too deep, far too deep, like a tunnel stretching endlessly down. From the black, something stirred. Inside, two pale hands slid from the dark, gripping the edge, pulling something forward. The boy screamed, fell back, but the figure crawled out. It wore a torn school uniform, its face hollow, skink stretched, and where its eyes should be, only black sockets. Then Whisper's scream was swallowed by the dark. The next morning, his friends found his backpack, dropped in front of the locker, but he was gone. The teachers said nothing. The janitor avoided questions, and the locker was chained shut again. But every night, when the halls are empty, when the lights flicker, you can hear it again. Not just breathing now, not just whispers, but knocking. 3 slow knocks.
And if anyone dares open it, the hallway never ends for them again. They vanish into the dark, their footsteps echoing forever, locked away inside the endless corridor, behind the locker that never opens.